Hello, everyone. So I apologize for the delay. You know me, if I was on time, the world would probably implode, and we all know it. But so today we're going to just jump right into it. We are talking about the education system. Mostly in America, it has sort of crept into other Western, especially schools and education systems. But we're mostly going to be talking about the American education system. So we're going to do a quick background and a little bit of history, and then I'm going to bring on our guest, who was so kind to agree to come on today and sort of talk about this. And she's going to bring a very interesting perspective, I think. You'll have to forgive, the animals are all running wild right now. But also, if you hear the dogs barking, I promise they are okay. They're just not used to being us. They're used to being on the couch and being fat and lazy. But let's see who's here. So, Logical Spot, good morning. I am feeling a bit better. Thank you so much. Legionist, my wrench, always good to see you. Pope Metallicus, thank you for coming. Miss Martin Muses, hello, love. Thank you guys so much for being here. I appreciate every single one of you. So, quick background on education, real fast. The school used to teach reading, writing, and arithmetic. That's why you still hear people bringing that up. They're like, my kids are going to school so they can learn to read, to write, and do arithmetic. They're not going to school for all this social engineering stuff. The reason that is still a saying is because back in the day, the church used to be in charge of the school mostly. That or it was the town that the school was in. And what you were taught in the schoolhouse was how to write your name, how to read your name, and how to read like basic English so you could learn the basic rules so that you weren't fooled into anything. You could understand traffic laws, you could read signs, different things like that. And then you were taught arithmetic so that you could utilize either at that time, because remember, the fiat currency hasn't always been the currency in America. It got centralized by the Fed. That's a whole other stream for another day. That's hours long. But the schoolhouses used to be very small. School would start, depending on where you lived, school would start between 9 to 9:30 in the morning, and it would go until about lunchtime. And then everybody would be dismissed. They'd walk home, they'd have lunch, and then the rest of their education started. It was how to function as a human being who had skills and could contribute to either the township, the county, whatever the case may be, the farm. So there is this huge misconception that schools were always like this and that education hasn't changed at all. It has, in fact, changed drastically, and in a lot of ways, not for the better. The biggest issue that people have sort of glossed over is who was teaching the kids when they left the schoolhouse. Well, like we said, the parents, but which parent? So it would be up to the mothers to teach their children everything that they knew. They knew how to, so that their children would know how to wash clothes, wash dishes, cook food, create things from scratch. This is how you bake and store bread for however many days. This is what you do with potatoes. They go down in the storage, down in cold storage, because, hey, guess what? Potatoes keep longer. Root vegetables, they keep longer if they're in a root cellar. That's where root cellars got its name. It's because root vegetables would be put down there. They would keep for much longer. This is how you pickle things. Like, I saw a TikTok thing reaction on YouTube, and this girl was like, how come they've pickled every vegetable except a cucumber? And I was flabbergasted. I was like, that she has got to be trolling. But even if she was, the comments in that video let me know that there were a lot of people that did not realize that a pickle is a cucumber that has been pickled. But all of these common sense things, they were taught for generations. Mothers were the teachers. Mothers taught you how to balance a checkbook, how to pinch a penny and make it scream. They taught you how they taught you how savings worked. They taught you how spending worked. They taught you how to sew, because you couldn't just walk into Walmart and buy a Granimals t-shirt for $4.98 for your 5-year-old because they stained their other one and you didn't have time to get the stain out, or you didn't know how to get the stain out. I've talked about this before, where there are people today that do not know that you cannot mix ammonia-based products with bleach, or that you're not supposed to clean your bathroom with bleach-based products. Everybody's like, why can't you clean the bathroom with bleach-based products? It's because human waste in general, you're not supposed to clean animal pens with it either, is ammonia-based. And when you mix ammonia and chlorine, you die. That's mustard gas. Like, oh, well, it's diluted bleach and it's just like, no, you don't understand. Like, bleach should be used sparingly. Yes, you can, you run it with your whites and everything like that. If you actually read the instructions, it's like a tablespoon of bleach. And you still need the detergent. Anytime you use bleach, it's a 1-to-2 ratio bleach to water. You are always supposed to dilute down the bleach. I don't even know how long I've known that. But my grandmother, my mother, my aunts, they always said you need to read and check labels, and you need to see what kind of cleaning supplies have what kind of base. Because if it's ammonia-based, you cannot mix it with a bleach-based cleaning product. And I was like, oh, that makes sense, because it's a chemical. Like, right there, I learned chemistry at like 5 and didn't even realize it. This is the stuff that we're talking about. This was common knowledge. There was no internet. There was no telephones for a long time. And yet people knew this because it was shared knowledge. It was common knowledge. It's not anymore because everybody's like, just Google it. The problem with that is if you've already mixed the bleach and ammonia, you've already done harm to yourself. Even if you don't die, you're going to injure something internally. And it just floors me. It floors me that this is where we're at. And yet people think that home-based education does not have any merits, when 90% of education through the years was home-based. My grandfather is one of the most intelligent men that I know. Can fix anything, and I mean literally anything. He has an 8th grade education. But when you look back at what they were taught through 8th grade, it's what most college kids are learning in their sophomore year. This lie about generals. Oh, well, you got to get your generals done before you can go into your degree-specific stuff. Your general stuff should have been learned in high school. Should have been learned in junior high. Like, what's insane is, instead of generals being, hey, here's the general base knowledge you need for your degree, it's general knowledge from everywhere. Because high schools from a lot of places are not up to par. It's insane. So now, instead of 2 to 3 hours in a schoolhouse with 10 to 25 kids, like, it would be, let's see, if you had K through 12 like it used to be, And like right now, the school that I teach at, I teach second and third grade combined, and I differentiate on math and reading. But everything else, I can teach history, civics, science, all that stuff. Grammar, spelling. We can all learn the same things. It's the reading and the math that really need the differentiation. So, but now I have kids in my class that I'm trying to teach them manners. I'm trying to teach them to chew with their mouth closed. Like, I'm trying to teach them basic respect of please and thank you and yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir. Because parents, what has happened is instead of being 90% home-based teaching and 10% in the schoolhouse, learning reading, writing, and arithmetic so that you can write your name, read signs, read contracts, and you can accurately pay for things. No, it's like so many parents have checked out. It's like 98% schools and 2% parents. I got to wait for our guests before I tell that story. But I have a story. I'm going to put a pin in that. In like 20 minutes, guys, you're going to have to remind me to tell that story. But it's wild. I couldn't even believe that the parents said that to my face. I was floored. So when you look at today's education system, they have openly admitted that it is for factory workers. It's so that people get used to a structured corporate cubicle. It's for cubicles. And it's just wild where we're at because these parents, they've long since checked out. The fact that homeschooling, they're like, homeschool is on the rise. What they should be saying is it's making a comeback because it always used to be education was based out of the home because you were supposed to have two parents. You were supposed to be able to have mom was at home and she taught you. She read with you. She did math with you. She taught you chemistry without knowing it. Cooking is chemistry. Cooking is chemistry. Cleaning is chemistry. So you were learning all of this stuff without realizing it. Safety? I mean, yeah, everybody jokes about it, but like, even when I was too young to really do anything and all I had to do was hold the flashlight for my grandpa or my dad or my uncles, they were like, you cannot move or this might slip and it might cut my hand open. So like I was also practicing patience and I just sat there with that flashlight and I did not move unless they told me to. But I learned the difference between bottom dead center and top dead center just through absorption because they would talk about it. I learned what a piston was. I learned what a belt was, a serpentine belt. I found out that you can have an engine that has a serpentine belt or 3 belts. And most mechanics really hate the 3-belt system. Found that out too because my uncles, my grandpa, my dad, they all cursed it. Because it was always the middle belt that broke, which was the hardest one to get to. Because the bottom belt you could get from underneath, the top belt you could get from the top, but the middle belt you couldn't really get to. That was all stuff that I just learned because I was watching and because they were explaining. You don't get that. Shop class is basically not a thing anymore in schools. It's wild. Ag, unless you're in middle America, it is almost impossible to find an ag class before college or before your senior year of high school. Because all you get is, oh, they're too young, it's too risky, it's too much strain. We don't want to stress the kids out. We don't want to stress the kids out. Here's the thing. And when my guest gets here, we're going to talk a little bit more about this. Kids today, especially in America, you said that you want to not stress them out, but they are the most medicated that they have ever been. And it's not because suddenly, oh, here's the cure. Ritalin has been around since the 80s. Ritalin's been around a long time. So it's not like it wasn't always there. Now you just have different variations of Ritalin. And quite frankly, I have serious issues with psychiatrists and psychologists. Because for somebody to sit there and be like, after 20 minutes, yeah, your child needs to be on this drug so that they function in this setting the way that the government wants them to, I got a real fucking problem with that. I really do. I am not saying that there are not people out there who don't need medication. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that as a populace, especially as children, we are horrifically over-medicated. And everybody's like, well, you don't understand. You don't understand this. You don't understand that. Guys, I have been through clinical depression more than once in my life. Because once you have it, apparently, it can always come back. I did not medicate. I didn't. I changed my diet. I worked out. I prayed a lot. Leaned on my husband. Leaned on family members that I trusted. And one day I just looked in the mirror and I was like, listen, we're done with this. And I don't even know what happened to this day. It's like a light switch got flipped. I was just, it was just got like the same way that it just hit one day, it was just gone. And I was like, oh, damn. Was it that easy the whole time? I doubt it because I did a lot of work leading up to that. And I'm not saying, hey, if you need a psychologist or psychiatrist and they prescribe you meds and you use them the way they are supposed to be used, that is on you. You are an adult. You can make your own decisions. I am simply saying that I knew it wouldn't work for me. I knew it wouldn't work for me. And then I found something that did. And I thank God every day that I did it that way. Because now when it happens, I know how to deal. I know how to counteract it. And I can honestly be okay. And it's, I think a big problem is the environment in which we live and work. Humans are entrepreneurial, like at their base level. I firmly believe that. Women do it through the home. They run the home. They decorate it the way they want. They garden how they want. They put the flowers. They put the vegetable garden however they want. They set things up a certain way. And then they run that home to make sure that things stay the way that they want or need to function properly for their family. Men tend to be far more aggressive in like finances and stuff like that. I'm not saying that you can't be switched, but I am saying that history doesn't lie. It doesn't. And if you can foster that teamwork, then you're going to be much better off. But now we have, gosh, I don't even know. I think, first of all, the two-parent household has been attacked on all sides. But to have a stay-at-home parent today is so rare. And it's honestly like that's probably one of the greatest privileges that you could have. Homeschooling gets a horrible reputation for no reason. Because when our country was functioning correctly, or at least better than it is now, And people had these common knowledge things like you don't mix bleach and ammonia-based products, or you don't clean a bathroom with bleach. Like, our country was able to thrive and be built into this just greatness that it is today, or that it was. Now we're really struggling. And so I do think a big core of it, like, you can say, oh, we've lessened the stress, but we're so over medicated, especially our children. And it's just sad to see. And on that note, hello, beautiful.
Hello. I heard most of that. Thanks for your patience, Lady Gravemaster. Thank you so much. This week's been hectic for me, traveling and hanging out with my mother-in-law and getting back late last night. And anyway, I appreciate it. Hey, but the wild people who were outside my window are gone now.
Nice. My dogs still think they're dying because they're laying on the couch. One of them is staring at me I can see through the sliding glass door. He's staring at me like I've abandoned him.
You've done something horrible to him.
Yes. I made him go outside. And I remind them every day, I'm like, you do know you were all cattle dogs, right? As they stare at me from the couch on their backs. And I'm like, okay. Well, hopefully you guys don't have to round up any cattle anytime soon, because you'd be terrible at it. But for those who don't know, you should all know Miss Keri Smith from the Deprogrammed podcast, and she does a whole bunch of other great work, great stuff. She's on Twitter for sure, but and here on YouTube. I don't know. Do you do Rumble?
I do. I'm now doing Rumble thanks to Dimaj and I helped me set it up.
Nice. Dimaj and I is good people.
Yeah. But thanks for having me here.
Yeah, thanks for coming. So, yeah, just sort of in general, gave a brief history. Schoolhouse used to be 3 hours a day max, and you showed up at around 9 in the morning after you'd had breakfast, and then you left at around lunchtime. You went home and you had lunch, and then mom finished teaching you stuff you needed, and a lot of it was how to function as a productive adult in society.
Yes.
Like cooking and cleaning and being respectful towards people, or how to sew a button on. Like
how to do practical things.
And I was, knowing not to mix bleach and ammonia, that's chemistry. Being able to cook anything is chemistry. Like,
it's more holistic, right? Isn't that the word people are using now? It's everything, the science of everything.
Yep. And we've lost out on that for this very modern classroom cubicle prep is what it is.
Yeah, so I heard you talking about, I'm not sure what you wanted to ask me about, but I heard you talking about the medication. And my pastor just gave a sermon about Gen Z. It's an excellent sermon. It's on here on YouTube, The Church on the Square. His most recent one on that page is called The Failure of Fathers to Train Their Children. And it starts off with him giving a lot of statistics about Gen Z and just how medicated they are. And it's overwhelming, the numbers of Gen Z who are on prescription meds, more than one prescription med, who have been diagnosed with some kind of mental health issue, who have been diagnosed with, of course, ADHD, depression, anxiety, personality disorders, a whole range of things. And then also the numbers who report suicidal thoughts, suicidal ideation, attempt suicide. And it's not just the differences of, one of the points he was making at the beginning of the sermon is, it's not just the difference of generations where you see a little generational difference. It's actually, it's more than that. It's something that people should be alarmed about. It's an extreme jump. Um, I don't have the stats from his sermon, but I do have these stats I was just looking at.
Yeah.
Between, so let's see, between 1996 and 1999. So it's much worse now. We're just talking about a 4-year period back when you and I were young,
Yeah.
young people.
Yeah. God, I was itty bitty. I was like
Right.
4.
When we were young, I was not 4, but 96 to 99, 5.7 million increase in prescriptions for Adderall for children.
Oh,
That
Adderall.
was in the 90s.
Yeah.
A 700% increase in the number of children prescribed stimulants from 2000 to 2012. A 700% increase. So
Oh,
it's not normal.
no.
Yeah, and like you said, I heard your caveat you were making about, you're not saying that these drugs don't help anyone. That's true. It's just that it's almost like a good analogy would be gender dysphoria. You used to see less than 1% of people diagnosed with gender dysphoria, less than 1% of kids who ever struggled with the concept of something like, oh, I don't like my body, or I feel like I was born in the wrong body. And now that it's become popularized, you see this epidemic, just this out of control numbers that aren't real. And I think it's similar. You could see an analogy there to, it's just common now to put your kid on meds. I have so many anecdotal stories of parents who, if they have young boys
Yep.
and they're in public school and
Yep.
they get told at a certain age, your son is hyperactive, he might have ADHD, we need to put him on meds. And it's like, maybe he's just a little boy.
Yeah. So, I was saying a little bit earlier. So I'm coming at this as a teacher. I teach 2nd and 3rd grade. For those who don't know, so it's a combined classroom. I teach 2nd and 3rd grade, and I have 7 boys in a classroom of 14. So, at 2nd and 3rd grade. So it's a very small Christian school. And last year, one of my 2nd graders, his mom said, we're going to go get him tested for ADHD because he's all over the place all the time. I said, okay, I'm going to tell you right now, it's probably going to come back positive, but I don't think he has it. And she was like, well, the doctors know. I said, okay. I said, well, when is his appointment? And she was like, in 6 weeks, because there's so much demand for these tests. You have to book them a minimum of 6 weeks out. Like, that's how much demand there is for this, because they're convinced that their child needs to be on medication.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, okay, well, it was the beginning of the school year. I was like, all right, let me go ahead, and if you're okay with it, I was like, I have a somewhat different approach that I use for teaching boys and girls. And she was like, okay, well, what is it? And I said, well, it's in the packet that I sent out via email. I said, and that went out parents' night. I said, I handed you 2 copies since I have 2 of your kids in my class. And she said, oh, yeah, I didn't get a chance to read it.
Maybe she has ADHD. I'm just kidding.
And she's like, well, I didn't really get a chance to read it. Like those packets, they're so long and there's 2 of them. Can you just tell me what's in it? So already, I'm gonna tell you guys right now, a lot of parents, and I'm not shaming this mom. I get it. Everybody's working, everybody's busy, everybody's tired. And this is just one more thing. Like, is it required reading? No? Okay, then I don't care. That is a big attitude. And it's a big problem because that's how we've ended up where we are. Parents are very ignorant of a lot of information because they just don't have the time, or they're so exhausted that they emotionally can't handle it. And I said, well, I can give you the bullet points. I said, but I strongly recommend you go read the packet because it's rather extensive. And I went over the different types of learners. And in it, most boys, I stated this, most boys are kinetic learners. They learn by doing, not by listening, not by watching, not by speaking. They learn by doing. So I explained in there in the packet, this is and this approach has worked for my classroom. I don't give instruction for longer than 45 minutes. It's 30 to 45 minutes, and then we take a 5 to 15-minute brain break, depending on if it was a 30-minute instruction of like read aloud, they get 5 minutes to go to the bathroom, get their wiggles out, get a drink, right? But for our longer breaks, for 15 minutes, I'm like, okay, we have a structured break. You can either do the outside movement activity or you can do the indoor focused activity, which for one day it might be you have to finger paint inside of the racetrack. So you have to take, it's colored corn syrup. You take it and you have to follow it through the path. And this helps with hand-eye coordination, handwriting, all that jazz. But the rule is we get 4 of those a day. You have to do each one at least once without fail. All of my boys only do the focused indoor, like the finger paint one, once. And then the other 3, they're outside. In 4 weeks, that same mom came back to me and she's like, I don't know what you're doing, but it's working. He's less aggressive. He's not angry. He's not frustrated. He's happy. He's a completely different kid. And I was like, yeah. And she was like, can I see your class schedule? We have 3 recesses on top of our breaks. And she was like, how are they able to like learn all of this stuff? And you still have all of like, you have recess and you've got these brain breaks. Like, how is that possible? And I said, because we're in school from 8:30 to 4 o'clock. It's insane. That is a 7.5 hour day.
Yeah.
Like that's so much time. And it gets wasted. And again, I'm a product of public schools. I understand it can be rough, but the kids need to move, especially the boys. And like, we were going over multiplication because we were doing 2 equal groups is the same thing as saying 7 plus 7. So 2 equal groups of 7 or 2 times 7 is the same thing as saying 7 plus 7. And I have one boy who got it right off the jump, but my other 6 were like, what? So we went out into what's called the big room. I took hula hoops and dodgeball balls. And I was like, look, I said, the rings are going to be our groups. They were like, okay. I said, and the balls are going to be like how much each team gets. Oh, okay. So we started like learning by 2. And so they started figuring it out. And from there, we were able to add more hula hoops and we were able to add more balls. And they were like, hey, Mrs. Gravemaster, obviously that's not my name, but they'd be like, Mrs. Gravemaster, did you know that 4 groups with 2 in each of them is the same thing as 2 groups with 4 in each? Like, they were making like that
their own connections,
their own bridges, their own connections. And because they were doing it and because they were learning it that way, where they were able to interact with it, they're going to retain it. And it floored me because I had this one mom stood in front of me and she was like, my son is an entirely different kid. And she's like, is there anything I can do to be helping? I said, yeah, make him read aloud to you for 20 minutes a night. Like, you'll be floored at how much his reading improves. He has jumped 3 grade levels in reading because that parent took that advice. Now I have another parent. I brought this up. One of my behavioral issue children is a girl, and we've worked through it. We've tried to talk. She's very much at this young age I had her for 2nd grade. She's now a 3rd grader. She loves attention and she will lie to get it. She will lie about people, her classmates, her best friends, in order to get that attention. And so I brought this up to the mom. I was like, listen, if this continues to happen, I was like, I can't have this, because now she's being defiant. She's acting out. She's causing emotional turmoil for the rest of the class. And this mom, no kidding, looked at me and said, well, you spend 8 hours a day with her, so you're going to have to deal with it. Like, there's only so much I can do. I was like, what? Are you serious? Like, I just stared at her. And she was like, we're going to be switching her medications, so that should probably help. And I was like, we don't have a medical form or slip for her. I didn't even know she was on medication. And the mom was like, yeah, it was supposed to be, it's a new drug for anxiety, but it doesn't seem to be working because she gets night terrors from it. So we're switching. I was like, oh my God, like that would have been nice to know, because
Yeah.
but it's just, wow. Like, I couldn't believe what this mom was telling me. She was like, I work, she's like, I work 6 hours a day, 6 days a week. I'm exhausted. I don't have the time. You're with her 5 days out of the week and we have a before and after care program. This girl is there from 7 a.m. when those doors open to 6 p.m. when they close. 11 hours she is in that building, 5 days a week. That's 55 hours. That's insane. And so with her, I'm still trying to navigate it, because the mom has yet again switched medication. And I genuinely believe, especially because I have, like I said, half my class is boys, they're able to focus, they're able to be cooperative, they're respectful, they engage, and they retain information. All because I'm not trying to force them to sit in a square box for 8.5 hours a day.
Yeah. I have these stats. I think this is where my pastor pulled those numbers, if you were curious.
42%. That's wild.
Yeah, this is from a survey conducted in 2022, the end of 2022. 42% of Gen Z diagnosed with mental health condition, but it's a higher number that are taking meds. It's 60% are taking some kind of med. So if you 42% have received a mental health diagnosis. The most common diagnosis for the younger generation is anxiety, followed by depression, ADHD, and PTSD. About 20% has been to therapy. 60% are on medication to help manage their mental health.
I am honestly shocked bipolar disorder is not on there.
Yeah. 42% of those born between 1990 and 2010, Gen Z, diagnosed with mental health. And then they have a chart here, so you can see. This is interesting. Oh, it went away. There it is. 42% diagnosed. 1 in 4 were diagnosed with a mental health condition during the pandemic. And 68% feel the pandemic has negatively affected their mental health. 57% to 60% are currently taking medication for their mental health. There is another article I was reading just about the pandemic, and not just about Gen Z, but about everyone. And it found that stimulants, the prescription for stimulants rose significantly during the pandemic. So that was among adults and children. Those who filled a prescription for at least one stimulant rose to 4.1%. It had been 3.6%.
Wow.
So it's jumped and then they said if you take especially certain groups like women aged 15 to 44 and men 25 to 44, that the prescription drug use, the stimulant drug use anyway, has jumped 10% in the past 5 years. So it's
because people don't know how to be alone. Like, that's the other, social media has become a dependency coping thing, I've noticed, because people don't know how to be by themselves.
I completely agree with this. Yeah, it's a you can find yourself becoming addicted to it in the same way that people are chemically addicted to things. If you
Mm.
have your phone away from you for a period of time, some people report having anxiety if you take it away for a certain amount of time, where
Yeah.
you're reaching for it or you're thinking or you need something to do and your brain goes to that dopamine hit of scrolling and going online. And I completely understand that. But yeah.
Yeah, hence the clout chasing and the escalation of, I mean, do you remember planking?
Yes.
Okay. This is the best example that I can think to give. It that trend obviously lasted 2 years, and no trend on social media lasts that long anymore because attention spans have significantly
Yes.
diminished. But for those that don't know, planking is literally, you would find a place that you could plank on, like literally do like a plank. And then you take a picture, you upload it, and it was, oh, look, like I planked on the bench in front of my church.
Right.
And then someone would be like, oh, well, I planked on the steps of the library, for the Harvard Law Library or whatever, because you have to be a student or alum or faculty in order to gain access to that library. And so it was small escalations, but then suddenly people are like planking on 3-story buildings over a gap. Like they're 3 stories up and they're planking a gap.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, look what I did. And the reason this trend died, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Keri, but I believe the reason that this trend died, at least what I know, a girl died doing the planking trend. Literally, like her death got caught on camera because she tried to plank on top of like this really small, she basically scaled the equivalent of like a phone tower or something, and it has like that little round platform at the top. And she tried,
I didn't know that. I didn't know
yeah,
why.
she tried to plank up there and she literally got blown off by the wind. She got blown off and she died. And then that trend died because suddenly, oh, it's not a joke anymore. It's not cute. The
Mm.
escalation is too much of a risk.
Mm.
But now we went from, I know, I love that you call them trans trenders because it is a social contagion, I swear.
Oh. Yeah,
It,
anything over the traditional 0.01% of people, I don't trust that in terms of
oh,
people who are
yeah.
claiming to be gender dysphoric. Of course, now they've moved the goalposts. Now they are claiming the WPATH, even the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, they're all claiming now, well, now you don't even have to have a gender dysphoria diagnosis. You're just trans if you feel like it. You don't even have to feel uncomfortable in your body. So what's
Yeah.
it mean? So what does any of it mean?
Yeah.
Nothing. Like yeah.
What
But
a nihilistic postmodern approach.
in terms of attention span though, yes, just anecdotally, I've mentioned this before on my show, but the one of my jobs, my Saturday jobs, I'm around young people quite frequently, groups of young people who get to pick their own playlist, and they don't listen to their favorite songs all the way through. I've found they will curate their
What?
own list. This is their songs that they picked for the day, and they will all be singing along to them. They clearly love these songs, and they'll listen to about 30 seconds, and they'll scroll to the next song and start listening to that one. They'll listen to 30 seconds to go to the next song, and I think it's so weird way. It's like a TikTok way of listening to music,
That
and
angers me.
I know.
I hate when people do that to me. Like, oh my God, my older sister, I was literally in the middle of singing Shania Twain, I Feel Like a Woman, and she switched it on me. And I was like, go
Yes,
back right now.
yes.
And she's like, well, the good part's over. Like, there's only like a minute left of the song. And I was like, there's a minute left of the song. What are you doing?
It's pretty ridiculous. So I get to hear a lot of young people music and learn a lot of the ways they consume media.
Oh my God.
And yeah, I mean, I'm laughing at it because it's just so absurd to us. And
That's
I don't
wild. My
I,
mother
I
would have.
can't imagine putting together you spend all that time putting together a playlist of your favorite songs and then you can't listen to any of them all the way through.
Oh, that's wild. I mean, it makes perfect sense, but that's wild.
Hmm.
I I will stab somebody if they mess with my music. Like I am not like yeah, I'm nope. I can't do that. I have even if I have only walked out on one movie in my life, and that was Bull Rat. I walked out on that one because I was like, this is stupid. I don't like it. And I was gone within like the first 10 minutes because it just wasn't for me. It was the only movie I've ever walked out on, and I've sat through some stinkers. Like, even if it's a book that I don't like, unless it just gets way out there, like I have to finish. I can't not. I'm a completionist, I guess, as the Gen Zers like to oh, you're a completionist. You
They've
mean
come
I
up.
finish tasks? Yes, I finish tasks.
Well, I heard this amazing essay, portions of it again in one of my pastor's sermons. Now I can't remember. Oh my goodness! See, this is good. This is funny that I can't remember because what I'm about to say is related to short attention spans and bad memories. But he was reading someone who was talking about the invention of the written word. When people started using the written word to tell stories rather than the spoken word.
Mm-hmm.
And it was this amazing essay about how if we popularize writing, now I'm not saying I agree with the sentiment here, but it was crazy to hear him read excerpts of this and think about technology today and how it applies. And the person writing it was basically saying, if we popularize the written word and everybody's writing, nobody's going to have an attention span anymore, and they're not going to be able to remember things. Because remember, this was at a time where people would memorize entire, books of the Bible, or
Mm-hmm.
um, they could recite popular works and plays, and now we're at a place where that was about the written word. Of course, then there's television, and there's
Mm-hmm.
radio and television and the internet, and now we're at a place where we're talking about AI and the things that are coming with that, and people are using Grammarly to write.
Oh, I
I
know.
saw a commercial for Grammarly the other day, and I just thought, wow, don't I guess we just removed all expectation for humans to be able to do anything, right? Like,
Mm.
it was a woman. The commercial was it was a woman at work who couldn't finish her presentation, her essay, and she went to Grammarly and said, write this for me, and it did. And it's like, she's like, score, I'm doing great at work. You're not doing anything. You just used AI
Yeah.
to write a bunch of gobbledygook. And
Yes. That's
and
we were
so but we're at a place where the point being, the more that we have started to rely on these things, like
mm-hmm.
the less we have the ability to recall things, to my memory is certainly affected. It's affected during this conversation.
I hate when that happens.
I can notice a difference too, just in myself when I was young and today. Take something like, I'm a bit older than you. We used to use something when I lived in Los Angeles called the Thomas Guide. It was a map where it was a book of maps, because LA was quite big, and you had to, based on where you're going, you had to map everything out in this book and the Thomas Guide.
Yeah.
And you had to look and turn the page and see where you went after that and see where you went, and you had to
I
learn,
remember
you had
those.
to know, you had to have several skills, which kids probably
Mm-hmm.
don't have today, and learning how to cross reference and know where you're going. And I would remember routes so much better, because once you've looked it up once and figured it out, you would
Mm-hmm.
remember it. And now I can tell this in myself, I've become so dependent on the maps function on my phone. I can't tell you how to get anywhere other than, like my one grocery store. There's a couple places I know, but otherwise it's like, oh, let me put it into the maps. It's like, don't you go there all the time? Yeah, on my maps.
On my maps. Yeah. No,
Like, I don't remember.
absolutely.
Yeah, so I don't know. Of course it makes sense that Gen Z has shorter attention spans. They grew up
Absolutely.
with these things in their hands, and we didn't have these until later. And these have
Yes.
affected our memory, our attention span, and we didn't have them until later. They've had
Yep.
them since they were young. So
Yep. No, yeah, and I was actually like it's the just Google it mentality. Like you used to know not to mix bleach and ammonia. Now, if you look it up, okay, great, but if you already mixed the bleach and ammonia, you've already done the damage. Like if and they're like, "Oh, well you can't just Google it on a test." Like kids care less about tests and assessments now because they're like, "Well, in the real world,
I can Google it.
I can just look it up." And I'm like, "Man, I remember I had to have my home address, my home phone number, my grandparents' address, my grandparents' phone number, and then one other relative. It was my aunt and uncle who only lived 2 blocks from the school. I'd have that shit memorized so that if anything like happened, or if I, because this, stranger danger was a big thing when I was in
Yeah.
elementary school. Because we also didn't have fences around our schools. Like, we just didn't. It wasn't a thing. Kids didn't walk off and people didn't walk in. Like, that was not a thing. And so it was like, okay, well, if you get lost, or if you, are scared or you're worried, you need to have these numbers and these addresses memorized. And of course, 911, so that if a police officer comes to help you, you can tell them who you are, who your parents are, and how to get a hold of them. Like, I would be shocked. My kids know my phone number, their dad's phone number, my husband, because we have our cell phones. They know our home address, and they know my mother-in-law's phone number, my father-in-law's phone number, and my mom and dad's numbers. Like,
That's very rare
that
because
is
a
very
lot
rare.
of kids don't know. I saw Boosh in your chat was asking, ask a 25-year-old
Yeah.
their social, their phone, and they probably
Oh,
don't know.
no.
But I look again. This has affected me, and I'm not even from that generation because I'm not kidding. My husband and I've been together 5 years this year. I wait, is it more than 5 years? See, look, uh, 5 years, and I just learned his phone number, and even then, it's not reliable. I have to double check when I'm like, because it's just
Oh,
been in my phone this whole time.
I
He'll
s
laugh at me. He remembers mine, but we'll be out, and if somebody's like, "What's your emergency contact?" I'm like, and then I'll say his number. I'm like, "Let me just look that up and make sure that's right." It's terrible. That's terrible. We used to have
it's
my brain was a Rolodex of numbers when I was a
yes.
kid.
Kids don't know
You
what a
know?
Rolodex is either.
No, they
Uh,
don't.
for those who are curious, it's this really cute contraption that you open it up, it almost looks like a fan, and then you go to the letter that you're looking for, because we alphabetize things for organization, and then you pull that out and you're like, oh, that's the information I'm looking for. I still, like, it's wild to me because I knew my husband's phone number after he gave, like, I just had to punch it in one time and I was like, cool, got it. Da 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 da. Like, but I also put ditties to things, so that helps me remember them
I
still. But
all the little, memory tricks that we had when we were young.
yeah, like Pluto is a planet, by the way. But did you ever learn, like, it's my very elegant mother just sat under neon plants?
Yes, I had
Like,
forgotten that. Yeah.
just so you could know the order of the planets. And you're like, oh, got it. And nowadays, people are like, why would you memorize something to help you remember something else? And I'm like, correlation.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't ancient Rome. I'm not going to just randomly bring up the mighty Jupiter in conversation and remember that, oh, my very elegant mother, I had to do it just, it's the 6th planet from the sun. Like, whereas if I just say the little ditty, my very elegant mother just sat under neon plants, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. That's the one. Because I got Uranus and Neptune mixed up all the time. Like, which one came where?
Yeah.
And I was like, neon plants. Okay, Neptune. Neptune is the
Well,
next.
this is gonna be a push with, what you were talking about with young people saying, "Why should I have to know anything or
Mm-hmm.
remember anything or be able to do anything or calculate anything?" Because in the real world, I'll just look it up. This is part of their push to get rid of completely decimate all standards and standardized testing.
Yes.
They
Yes.
are arguing, and they've been arguing for a while. I used to teach SAT prep classes,
Mm,
years ago. I would teach 11th graders, how to improve
mm.
their SAT scores. You'd do like this
Yeah.
several week long class and kind of boot camp. And even at that time, there were people arguing the social justice stuff. It was more on the fringe, but you would hear the social justice stuff about how, oh, the SAT is biased against marginalized people and against
Oh,
women and people of color and gay people. And now that, of course, those voices are no longer on the fringe, they're the mainstream.
yep.
They're arguing that to ask kids to be able to do something like a standardized test or the SAT is oppressive and that it's useless because they don't need to know any of those things to in the real world, of course. Yeah, look
Yeah.
it up. And there's this real push, I think, to move us away from grades in the classroom because
Mhm.
you might hurt feelings if you
Yeah. Well,
don't
they
give everyone A's, and to move away from grades at all.
yeah. Do you remember so when I was in school, I don't know what was an A for you?
I
What
think it
was
was
an
a 96 and above.
96? Okay, so I was 90, so it was 94 to a 100 the A. And then it was 88 to 94 or 93.4 or whatever was a B. And then uh a C was 79 to 87. And then a D was 70 to 77. And an F was a 69 or lower. They have it's called the adjusted grading scale. Now it's in 10 percentiles. So 10 to 90 to 100 is an A, but it's
What?
actually it's actually 89.5 to 100 is an A. And if it's an 89.3 and you like really like that student or you know they're working real well, did they put in that effort? Could you give them that extra 0.2% because of effort and give them that A? And I'm like, this is the problem. Like grades aren't given, they're earned. Like that whole mentality has taken over. If you guys knew the amount of politics and bureaucracy that is in education, it's disgusting. It is such a vicious, horrific machine that it's part of the reason why homeschooling is taking back over. But yeah, so now an F is a 59.4 and lower.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, they
Yeah.
did the same thing to the SAT. They've changed
Yep.
it so many times. You are being younger than me. I think one of the times when they did a very important change to it was pretty soon after my class of 96. I'm aging myself. 96 high school. After we took it, they changed it significantly. I remember that because around that time, a lot of people my age were very resentful towards younger people, like, yeah, but what is that? And like 98 or 99,
Back
people were
back
very
in
upset
my
about it.
day,
Back in
we
my
took
day, that would have been a such and such.
we took the real SAT. Yeah, no,
Yeah, yeah.
I 96. I was 5, 6.
Oh,
I
wow,
just
honey.
turned 6. I was young. Um but the wild things so what they did was it's been uh Disbrew and I have actually talked about this a little bit. They changed the structure. Girls do better at coursework and boys do better in examinations and assessments
Mhm,
because boys tend to handle quote unquote stress because parent like I know test anxiety is a thing,
mhm.
but also I have some doubts on just how tumultuous it is, if that makes sense. But uh they changed the schools now where it used to be 60% tests and assessment, 40% coursework. It's now 80% coursework and 20% assessments or testing. And like not shockingly, boys are doing worse because
Yeah.
a girl, and this is just facts, boys have 3 major testosterone dumps in their life. When they're toddlers, when they are preteens, and between the ages of 18 and 27, which is why they're such horn dogs, quote unquote. Like they're having their body that is their body will still produce testosterone, but in those 3 parts of their life, their body naturally produces like a 300% spike in testosterone because it's necessary for their muscle and their bone density and everything like that. So it's normal behavior. So the girls who have these massive dumps of hormones until later when they have periods. Like, can we say
Yeah.
that on here anymore?
Yeah.
I don't know. YouTube always um but it's not until later when girls go through that. And so um it's wild to me that boys are being punished for what their body is naturally doing. But what girls' bodies naturally do is somehow like celebrated. It's like, oh, well, like people are painting pictures with their menstrual blood. And
Yeah.
they're like, it's so empowering. It's so incredible. And I'm like, no, it's not. That's unsanitary and gross. But they've shifted it to coursework, and girls can sit at a desk for 8 hours with very few breaks. They can do it. Boys are not built like that. Boys are supposed to be doing things. That's why a majority of them are kinetic learners. They are literally built to be doing stuff. And it's just, it's, they're being punished for who and what they naturally are. And I just hate it. And then you have people like Mulvaney, who I saw your tweet on it where it's, yeah, medicate, get drunk, have sex with strangers. And I'm like, I have not heard that song, but your description.
The whole song is, so Dylan Mulvaney has a new song out called Days of Girlhood.
Ugh.
And the whole song is like, Monday, Tuesday, I do this, Wednesday, I do this. And on each of the days, it's something like, Monday, can't get out of bed. Tuesday, go get my meds. Wednesday, do a walk of shame, didn't even know his name.
Oh,
The
God.
whole song is like being a woman basically is pill popping, boozing, casual anonymous sex, depression, medications, and mental breakdowns. And I tweeted, that's not being a woman, that's being a leftist woman.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I had to make a joke there.
No,
but seriously, there is some truth to that. That's why,
Mhm.
like, I think with all of humor, that I cracked myself up because I was thinking, but there is some truth to it. He is performing a certain kind of womanhood, and I was familiar with that kind of womanhood when I was on the left.
But that's the
And
womanhood
that's
that
what
gets,
culture's selling you.
yeah. Like my friends, I was talking to some people. I've never seen an episode of Sex in the City in my life. I've never watched Grey's Anatomy.
Me either. Neither of
Like
those.
never.
You and I, girl.
And they're like, how have you never seen them? And I've never, like, 90210. I saw one and it stuck with me forever. I'll try and find the clip again. But it was, I looked at the chick and I was like, you are a horrible human being. And it was called One Tree Hill. And he was like, what do you want? Like, what did you want from me? And she was like, I wanted you to fight for me. Even though I told you to leave me alone, to go away, to move on, and to be
That sounds like BPD. I'm sorry.
No, you're totally fine. Like she was like, I wanted you to fight for me. And I was like, oh my God, that's the lie that gets sold. Because while boys were being told no means no, if a woman says no, she means it, you need to take her seriously. Girls were being told if he really cares about you or if he really likes you, he will pursue you. He will want you. He will show you that he wants you by not giving up.
Well, if we're going to talk about that, I mean, I don't know how far afield. I mean, do you want me to stay on topic with schools, or can we talk about anything?
No, we can talk about. I mean, we've naturally segued here, so
okay,
by all means.
Well, I think that's from what you're describing. By the way, I never watched any of those shows. I'm
Yeah,
gonna play One Tree Hill. I don't know. I just missed out on. I missed not missed out. I missed a lot. I had my shows that I watched, and I just kind of
Yeah.
stuck to them. Golden Girls. Hey.
Yes,
And
I love
and I Twin Peaks. I mean, I was into the weirder shows anyway, but what you're describing, that whole "I hate you, don't leave me." In fact, I think there's a book by that name. It sounds like borderline personality disorder, which I have a friend, Josh Slocum. He's the host of the Disaffected podcast, and we've been on each other's shows before. I love what he does. So I try and talk about social justice or woke ideology, my old belief system, through the lens of, I try and talk about it, looking at it as an ideology, as a belief system, how it operates. He looks at it through the lens of psychology, why it operates, why it's so attractive to people. And he looks at it through the lens of cluster B, specifically like the four different supposedly four distinct different cluster B personality disorders, but they overlap a lot. One of those being borderline. And borderline, I think his premise, his hypothesis of his show is a great one because you can see these borderline tactics and ways of behaving, which are abnormal, being pushed at every level of society. The sort of the saying one thing but doing another. What you're describing, which sounds like an innocuous teenage television plot, but it's
Mhm.
not. I see women behave like that all the time.
Yep.
Sometimes I watch reality
Found it.
television so I can get an idea of what younger people are narcissistic younger people are like, and the on the reality shows the women behave this way.
Yes.
They're over the top. They say one thing but they do another. That's not
Mhm.
normal, and that's not
No.
feminine. That's personality disorder. Like,
Yes.
I'm telling you to leave, but I actually secretly want you to fight for me. Or, the whole trope about if a man asks, what's wrong? And the woman's like, nothing. But there's something wrong. And she treats him poorly until he figures it out. That's not
Yeah.
normal. And that's not
Yes.
feminine. That's a personality disorder behavior. Like,
It's
that's,
it's evil. Like,
yeah.
I think so this is the clip I was talking about. This is the only episode of this show I've ever seen. And I loathed it with every fiber of my being. And this scene specifically sticks out to me because my girlfriends who watched this show religiously were explaining to me, they're like, oh, well, this is so and so. And she and him were together. And she told him to move on because she just wants him to be happy. So he did, but she really didn't want him to. And so she moved on. And now they're like fighting because neither of them is happy in their relationship. Or however, like it was just all twisted. And then this is what happened next. This is what she said.
What I wanted you to fight for me. I wanted you to say there is no one else that you could ever be with, and that you'd rather
What?
be alone than without me.
You'd rather be alone than be without me.
What a crazy person.
Look, like this clip's only 26 seconds. And all of in the first 12 seconds, the insanity that came out of her mouth. These kids are in high school, by the way.
And by the way, in the chat, some of the people in chat are saying it's like it has is saying it's emotional abuse. It is. That's the thing about cluster B personality disorders. I don't actually have a lot of sympathy for people who have cluster B. I don't view it as it's not a normal uh, uh, part of it's not a normal range of human moods.
No.
It's not like depression, which you might get occasionally. That's like a normal, you might be in a low
Yes.
mood for a while. It's not like anxiety. It's not any of those mental health things. Cluster B personality disorders, they used to be called character disorders, which tells you a lot. It's like something's wrong with you as a person. Like the way you treat others is bad. It's bad. There is a moral judgment there. There used to be a moral judgment there.
Yes.
And they abuse people. And so I understand that, on the one hand, I try and have empathy of while you're dealing with this thing where you haven't learned how to be a good person for whatever reason. A lot of times it comes from an abusive childhood. But you're still abusing people.
Yes.
And it's emotionally abusive. Now, I'm not saying this character, I don't know anything about the show. I'm not saying this
I don't
character
either.
had that. I'm just saying this tactic of saying one thing and doing another. And also, what an unrealistic expectation. Like, I wanted you to do this and I wanted you to be unhappy without me for the rest of your life. If I were this guy and they're broken up, I'd be like, wow, I'm really glad. Thank you for helping me understand that I made the right decision to break up with you.
Yes.
Like,
Look, so this is the problem with this kind of TV is it's so unreal. It's a soap opera, which
Right.
soap operas are supposed to be exaggerated and hyperbolic. But this stuff got taken, it doesn't get treated the same as soap operas at all. Like there are people whose whole personalities are based off of shows like Grey's Anatomy and Sex in the City and shows like this one. And like look, watch his face here. Watch it.
I wanted the Lucas Scott from the beach that night, telling the world that he's the one for me.
How was I supposed to know that?
You
Just are.
He's like, what? You never told me. And she's like, you should have just known.
Yeah, that's so stupid.
His face, he's just like, what? And she's like, she is holding. So here is the problem. She saw something desirable one night on a beach. And rather than taking it as the spontaneous romantic gesture that she knows him to be capable of doing, and trying to, one, be worthy of it, and two, for lack of a better word, like earn another one, she just expected him to be like that all the time. And for him to just know that she wanted him to be like that all the time. That would be so, like, even when I look at these people who hate on everything, and that's their whole, well, hello, Steph. Hello, love. Steph's in the chat. Mine already home. Mwah. You should all go check her out if you haven't already. But the problem with this is, could you imagine how emotionally exhausting that must be for him? Like, if you had to be dialed up to 11 all the time when that's not your normal thing.
Everyone who has been with someone who exhibits cluster B personality disorder traits, they often describe it as walking on eggshells.
Yeah,
because your whole life becomes hinged to that person's emotions. And borderline, for example, some people have described it if that a person with borderline personality, it's basically like having third degree burns of the whole body, but
Ooh.
Emotionally, like they're constantly inflamed. They're at a 10, and they go from 0 to 10 like that. It's not like bipolar, which bipolar, it used to get misdiagnosed a lot as bipolar or
Yeah.
manic depression, because bipolar, it's sort of you move through these moods over a period of time. Like, you might be in the manic state for a week, you might be in the manic state for several weeks, and then you go through the depressive state for weeks. That's bipolar. But borderline is more like within 5 minutes you might see 5 extreme emotions, very different too. And so a lot of times people like that character. It's so funny you put that scene up. But that guy, if he were to stay in a relationship with that girl, it's like you're
Yeah.
always on edge because you
Yeah.
don't know what's going on in her head. She expects you to be a mind reader, and her emotions rule everything. You're not a real person
Yes.
to her. You don't get to have emotions or be an individual. Everything's hinged around how she feels inside,
Yes.
So
And she's not going to be transparent about those feelings. You're just supposed to recognize that. Like,
yes.
it drives me crazy. So, like, my husband, he'll look at me, he'll be like, babe, what's wrong? And instead of saying nothing, I will, something that I actually say now is, because it's obviously, it's not that nothing is wrong. It's just sometimes I don't know what's bugging me. Something's bugging me, something's off, but I don't know. So I look at him and I'm like, I don't know. I was like, something is up and I can't figure out what it is, and it's just bugging me. And he'll be like, okay, well,
That's an honest way to say, I'm having a mood.
yep.
I'm feeling sad. I don't know exactly why. That's fine. But that's the opposite of what a lot of women are being taught to do through
Mhm.
media today. And not just women, there are men who do this too, where not sometimes it's also it's not like the example you just gave, Lady Gravemaster, where you don't know. They do know. They're mad about
Yeah.
something, and they
Yep.
know specifically what they're mad about, but they lie and they pretend and they play this emotional game instead, where it's sort of like, what's wrong? And they're like, nothing, because they want you to have to figure it out.
Yeah, they want you to pry. Like, how much do you care? How much are you
Oh,
willing to dig?
yes.
And I'm like,
And that's a
just
child.
and I'm like, clearly you don't care about them, because now their mental health is suffering because you want to be a baby.
Yeah, that's a child. And
Yep.
I'm like, I don't have a lot of sympathy for that. I'm a little bit hardline about it. Like, I don't, because I've had too many people with that kind of behavior in my life, in my past. I grew up with a mom with those traits,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I've gotten a lot better at because of some bad experiences. My ability to detect that is getting better
Better, yeah.
every year, and so I'm a little hardline about it now. If I see a couple of those red flags of
Mm.
you seem to be an emotionally toxic person,
Ye-
I'm probably gonna ghost you because
Yeah,
I just can't have you around me. Yeah.
yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
No, no, fine. You're talk. That's why you're here. They don't
Okay.
my voice. No, I completely hear you. So something I've noticed, And I'm not saying that, again, just like with medication for certain issues, I'm not saying that the need isn't there. And with this thing that I'm going to say, I'm not saying that it's not true for some. But I have noticed that especially leftist white women really love to hide behind the phrase hurt people, and healed people heal people. I'm gonna let you guys know right now. Some of the best people I know came from destroyed homes. Like, mom was an addict, didn't know who dad was, had 3 siblings, trying to get out of the hood, joined the Marine Corps at 17, took his 3 younger siblings as dependents so that he could get them out of the hood, and was raising them on his own, his 3 younger siblings. He didn't have to do that. He didn't have a male role model, but he recognized the situation he and his siblings were in. He did not like it. He didn't like the random men showing up in his house at any given time of day or night. He didn't like that the baby could get hold of razors and Coke dollars and all this other stuff. And he's like, as soon as I can, I'm going to change this. So he got his mom to sign the waiver. She was coked out of her mind, apparently, but she still signed it. Signed the waiver so that he could join the Marine Corps. Then she signed over her parental rights to him, and he officially adopted his 3 younger siblings.
Wow.
The bullshit excuse. And when I tell you he is from he was from the fucking hood. Like, way, way deep in the hood, out of fucking Bronx. Like, he was on, like, I don't know exactly where Harlem and the Bronx and where everything lines up in the boroughs, but he said, imagine Harlem, but it's in the Bronx. He expected me to know that, but I didn't grow up in New York City. I have no frame of reference for that, like, whatsoever. And I said, I'm not gonna lie, I don't know what that means, but it sounds fucking terrible. Like, it sounds awful. And he was like, yeah, it's bad. He goes, usually, he goes, you either end up a victim of a gangbang or you're part of a gangbang. And he's like, most people don't live past 25 in his neighborhood. 25, Keri. Like, that's fucking wild. And excuse my language. So, but yeah, he got out. He took his siblings with him. His youngest sibling, the baby, I still stay in touch with him. She's about to go to medical school. These are kids that the media always tries to say, yeah, like these are the people that the left claims to be fighting for. He got no help from them growing up. His siblings didn't get any help from them. Nobody rode in on a white horse to save them. He had to take care of everything. And now he's got a brother who runs his own business. He's got his other little brother who is in college and is apparently a hell of a football player. And he's got a sister who's getting ready to be a doctor. He is a gunnery sergeant in the Marine Corps.
Wow.
Like, he is literally the success story. And I'm like, bro, you're like, I tell him all the time, like, he is one of the biggest inspirations in my life. And he was like, no, he's so humble. He's like, I'm just doing what any man should do for his family. And I was like, bro, you don't even know how good of a man you are. Like, it's crazy. So, yes, I get that if the only example you have is, this is where the bully theory comes in. He's probably being a bully because he has a bad home life. I know some of the worst bullies I know have really good home lives.
Well, it's a explanation, but it's not an excuse.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, lots of us have come from abusive homes. We don't all become abusive. So I hear what you're saying. It's an explanation. It helps explain it. It's like looking into a serial killer's background. A lot of them have abusive homes. But so do a lot of people, and they don't all become serial killers. You know, it's like
Exactly.
it's sort of you have some people, I guess, that confuse the two. They
Mhm.
think that you should that people have no personal responsibility and no
Yeah.
free will and no ability to choose a different path, and that's just not true. So
Well, it's
I
like
don't
that mother who left her 10-month-old in the pack and play, or 16-month-old, while she went on a 10-day vacation. Did you hear about that?
know.
Yeah. Uh, this monster, definitely not a mother, left Cheerios and 2 sippy cups of juice in a pack and play with her 16-month-old while she went on a 10-day vacation.
Wow.
And obviously, the toddler, the baby died of dehydration and starvation. And the mom just got sentenced to life without parole. And I said, no, this is what the death penalty's for. This right
Yes.
here. This is what the death penalty's for. And her justification was she needed a break and nobody would watch the baby.
It's selfish. It's a culture of selfishness. See, this is what I'm talking about with that's one of the reasons I like Josh's show is he talks about how these things that are characteristic of abnormal
Mm-hmm.
personality disorders are now becoming normalized. Like social justice ideology, my old belief system is asking us to accept and normalize the behaviors of mentally ill people, of a mental
Mm-hmm.
illness, of character disorders. It's the norm for this belief system. And it's not just people in this belief system who behave this way. Of course, anybody, I've met
Yeah.
people in different faiths and stuff who have some of these traits. It's just that social justice ideology or woke ideology is currently dominant. It's currently culturally mainstream, and
Yep.
it is involved in normalizing these behaviors. You even see it. I mean, you see it on a national level now all the time. You see manipulative tactics. I mean, look at stuff like even the president pushing pushing these false manipulative tactics, like if you don't allow doctors to surgically and medically transition children, well, then you're going to cause child suicides.
Mm.
That's no different than a suicide threat that a
Yes.
borderline person makes to get their way or to get attention.
Yeah. If
It's
you leave
not
me, I'm going to off
true,
myself. Yeah.
right? And people need to react to that in the same way that you should react to it in real life, which is to call that person's bluff. You call
Yeah.
their bluff. If someone makes a suicide threat, you take it seriously. You call the police. You call the ambulance to come over right now.
Yep.
Every time they do it, and like, and that's
Every time.
and the same thing with it's like you can't allow people to hold you hostage by taking advantage of your empathy, by threatening something so
Yep.
horrible like that. And a lot of times, I mean, it's just an empty threat. It's to get control over you.
Yes.
So treat it
Hey.
like it's real. And in real life, I'd say the same thing. If a person is feeling suicidal ideation, they need to be hospitalized until they're no longer feeling it. We need to bring back mental institutions.
Yeah. We
So,
do. Make those a thing again. And like the other, like, punish, I don't understand how you can get in trouble. Okay, you can get arrested for interfering in an investigation. You can get arrested and charged and jailed for that for like 3 years. But you make a false rape allegation and you're fine. You can walk free.
yeah.
And it's this lie that women never had any sort of agency, freedom, or a job until 1963, apparently. Like, say what you will about feminism, they have a very good marketing team, like whoever it is, because they have managed to convince at least a generation, but more likely two, that women had no freedom, no power, no purpose until 1960s.
Yeah.
Which is not true. It's simply not. And this is why they want to erase timelines. And that's why when you watch certain shows, you're like, I can't get a sense of time. I don't understand, like, where are we in relation to this other event that happened in the show? And to them, it doesn't matter because time is a constraint. It's a figment of the human imagination. We should not be strapped down by the white supremacy idea of time. Like, if you're on time, you are a white. So obviously, I'm not a white supremacist because I was 12 minutes late today or something like that. So clearly, I'm good there.
I always joke that being late is my what do they say? You need to divest of your white privilege. That's what I'm doing. If I'm late, it's because I'm trying to get rid of my white privilege.
Right.
And in solidarity with people of color who can't be on time, apparently. I'm just kidding.
Like,
this is what they push. They push the idea. In their stupid whiteness posters, they put stuff in there about how people of color can't be on time, and like that's so racist. So okay, if I'm late, then I'm just trying to be in solidarity. Not all heroes wear capes, lady.
You are. Thank you for your sacrifice, Keri. It's greatly appreciated. Oy vey. I remember there was a time where Coach Carter? Do you remember the movie Coach Carter?
The movie? No.
Oh. It's got Samuel L. Jackson in it, and he's talking to, you should watch it. It's so good. But he's just agreed to be the high school basketball coach. He shows up and he puts standards in place, and he's like, practice starts at 3. You are late as of 2:55. You will wear a tie on game day. You will maintain a 2.0 average, or I forget what it was, a 2.3, because it was for scholarships. Like, you will maintain a 2.3 grade point average, this, that, and the other. And he's like, student athlete. He's like in a class. So he's in a classroom because the parents are upset. They're like, why do we have to do all this stuff? A suit and tie on a suit jacket and tie on game day? Like, that's ridiculous. And he was like, was it 3.2? Thanks, Boosh. Yeah. So it's a B average, right? So 3.2 so that they could get scholarships. He's like, because it's student athlete. Student comes first. And I was like, this is such a good show. And what he was teaching them was actual, like, self-respect, self-discipline, accountability, responsibility. And he was giving them tools so that they could take that into their adult life and apply it there and be successful there. And it's based on your story. And then you get to the end and you read the stats and like your heart just swells. And it's such a good show. I highly recommend it. But the problem is so I don't know about you, but growing up, especially in middle and high school, most of my teachers were male, especially in math, science, geography, like all of the hard skill classes is what they call it. So soft skill was like language, lit, English writing, stuff like that. Those were the soft skill courses. The hard skill courses were basically all taught by men. Now, what they've done over the years is essentially they're like, why would a man want to be a teacher? Why does he want to be around kids? That's just creepy. That's one way that they have stigmatized fatherhood and the male role model. Why would a male want to be a teacher? Like, it's creepy that a guy wants to be around kids all day. No, he wants to lead and show them what is capable, what's possible. And he wants to be a good role model, especially for the boys in his classroom. He wants to help them be successful, and he wants to show them what a good role model is. And if you look at the stats of teachers who sleep with students, which is statutory, it's rape.
Yeah.
Like,
especially women.
It's most 89%. I had to sit through a whole training course on this. 89% of teachers who sleep with students are female.
Yeah.
89%. That's not, this isn't like 51-49. It's 89%. And it's been mostly women throughout the history of public education. If you go back and look at the stats, it's female teachers, usually in their mid-20s, sleeping with 14, 15, 16-year-old boys. And it's wild because even when men even when most teachers were men, it was still overwhelmingly females sleeping with students. Like the statistics are just wild when you look into it. And so they've taken male role models and male leadership out of the schools. Every principal I've ever had and every vice principal I've ever had were male. Like, and now you barely see that. And now there's chaos in the schools, and people are like, we can't control these boys. They're just wild. They're insane. They don't listen to us. Well, yeah, because they're bigger, they're stronger, they're faster. Why would they listen to you? Like that they've woken up to where they stand on the food chain, and you're below them. Like, why would they listen to you?
Mhm.
You need that. Like, there was it's on YouTube somewhere. I wish I could find it again, but this kid is throwing a fit. The mom's like, you're sick. You need to go to bed. You need to lay down. And he's like, I don't want to. I don't want to. Kid's maybe like 3-4 years old, screaming at his mom, refuses to lay down. All dad does is walk in the room. Kid turns around, sees the dad crying, stops instantly. Dad points at the bed and says, get in there. Kid lays down, goes to sleep. Just like that. Like, there, as much as people want to cry about, I guess, imbalance of power, like whatever the freaking buzzword for it is now, I can't keep up.
The gender roles, or
Yeah, the reversal of gender roles, or the unfair distribution of labor, bunch of gobbledygook. Like, it really is. As much as you want to cry about it, nature versus nurture, this is very much shown. Nature wins. Like, when a man steps in and he is the authority figure and he doesn't abuse it, he utilizes it as structure and guidance and model, the kids are all going to respect that, and they're going to get in line.
Yes. This is to go back to the sermon I mentioned at the beginning of the episode. Like I said, I would highly recommend it. It's called The Failure of Fathers to Train Their Children. And somebody in the chat had said, but the response, they're men and women both have a role to play. Yes, yes, yes. I agree with all that. Of course, if you're normal and I'm normal, we both know that's a given. We shouldn't have to say that. This sermon is specifically about fathers, though, and the disciplinary role. It doesn't mean women shouldn't, there's always these assumed things that people think when there's something left out. That you don't assume those things. It's not being said. Nobody's saying women don't have a role to play in discipline or whatever. They're just saying this sermon is specifically about the father's role in training their kids. And I highly recommend it.
I just dropped it in the chat. So
cool.
Links in the chat.
Yeah. I think it's the best. I think it's the best sermon for these times. Like, if I had magic powers and I could compel everyone to watch one short sermon, I would force society to watch this one. Yes. I'm like, gosh, if people watched this, it says everything. It's,
Yeah. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions is because if you notice in Hollywood, the way that they build up women is to take away from men. Like, they have to, like, in Hollywood, they have to take away from women or from men to build up the woman. But a male you go back and watch, they don't have to take away from women. In fact, if you look, some of the most dangerous villains are female, because they understand who they are, what they're capable of, and how to utilize their body for whatever they want without going too far. Like God, what was the show? The Matrix. He's like,
oh yeah,
like, were you listening, or were you looking at the woman in the red dress?
Yes.
Like, that's what I'm talking about. And for some reason, people are like, oh, humans shouldn't be that way. We should all be androgynous, but also at the same time sexy and beautiful, and fat is beautiful, and pride is beautiful, and it's like, I'm like, so you're saying the 7 deadly sins? So gluttony is beautiful, pride is beautiful, lust is beautiful. Yeah, They are knocking out the deadly sins. Why should you have to get up at 7 a.m. to go to work at 8 to come home at 5? Like, you should, like, just stay at home. You can work from home in your pajamas. Like, sloth. Like, they're glamorizing the 7 deadly sins. And, like, vanity is a sneaky one.
Mm.
Because, like, they're like, oh, fat is beautiful. So they're encouraging gluttony. And then you have women who are, and I mean, like, overtly, like, grossly obese. We're talking 600 pounds.
Mm.
And they're like, I am a solid 10. And I'm like, what? How do you come to that conclusion that you are a 10? But, for example, I forget who it was, but it was one of those, like, walk the street podcasts, and it's like, if you had to rate yourself from 1 to 10, what are you? Oh, I'm a 10. And then it was, okay, what do you think Jennifer Aniston is? And they're like, she's kind of mid. She's probably like a 6.
What?
Yeah, I was like, whoa, even if you don't like Jennifer Aniston, and
This sounds like what's called the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is about intelligence. But this sounds like something similar, but for physical attractiveness. So the Dunning-Kruger effect supposedly is, it's the name given to this phenomenon where the higher you are on the IQ scale, the more likely you are to underestimate your own intelligence and to overestimate the intelligence of people around you. So, for example, people who actually are geniuses, they usually underestimate how smart they are if you ask them compared to other people, and they are likelier to overinflate the intelligence of others or assume a higher intelligence of others. But the people right in the middle are very likely to overestimate their own intelligence and to underestimate the intelligence of everyone else. You know, these people, the midwits, the mid IQ people,
yep,
they're
yeah,
so convinced they're smarter than you and everyone else, and they have to tell you how smart they are.
yeah,
Which, again, geniuses don't usually have to say it. It's just you kind of tell. But these
yep,
people have no clue. They really believe they're that smart. It's this is weird kind of inability to self-evaluate right there in the middle, like just slightly above average IQ. There's something similar going on there where you've got like the truly beautiful women, they would probably underestimate their own beauty and
yeah.
overestimate. But the ones in the middle there or whatever at the end, they're like, I'm a 10 and Jennifer Aniston's a 5. Right? Or whatever. You're
Yeah,
like,
and
what?
I'm like, bro, I don't know
Really?
what scale you're using, but that ain't it.
They
That
got to
ain't
come up
it.
with a name for Dunning-Kruger, but for physical attractiveness
Yeah,
instead
because
of IQ. Yeah.
it's wild to me. I'm just like, I'm sitting there and I'm like, listen, I would say Jennifer Aniston is like an 8.5, 9. I don't think I think Catherine Zeta-Jones, that's a 10. Catherine Zeta-Jones is a 10 for sure in my eyes. Because you're like, oh, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. But there are like objective standards of beauty. Because if there weren't, there wouldn't be a rating scale at all. Like, no art would have meaning because everything is equally
Right.
beautiful. But I'm sorry, uh the 17th, as much as I love them and they're beautiful to me, the 17th picture of a stick family holding hands that my 6-year-old has brought to me and said, look, mom, I made this for us. And I hang it up on the fridge and I'm like, I love it, baby. It's beautiful. And it is subjectively to me. But if I put that up against, like, I don't know, the Sistine Chapel and what Michelangelo did, there's no comparison. Obviously, my 6-year-old's picture is better. I'm just kidding. But like it's wild to me that objective standards are considered hateful. And I'm like, without objectivity, that's how you lose. That's how you fail. Because if you don't have an objective measure, nothing is going to be truthful.
Well, here's how I would explain this. This whole ideological war, this culture war that we talk about, whether it's in gaming or comics or the movies, entertainment, whether it's in knitting clubs. I saw Ann Pinkova was here earlier from Politically Incorrect
Yes.
Knitters, wherever it's at. This ideology, my pastor describes it as a war against reality. That's exactly what it
Yes.
is. It's not just, like I said, my friend Josh Slocum talks about it in terms of psychology. He looks at it through a psychological lens. All of these
Mhm.
tools are great for understanding it better and how it operates. But if you take it down to its bare essential, like, what is this? What is this problem in society that's happening? What is this ideology? It's a war with reality. That's why
Yeah.
that's why there's no objective truth in this belief system.
Mhm.
They adamantly, like, they want to overthrow any objectivity, any objective truth, any standard of measurement. To go back to the test scores we talked about, any standards whatsoever, they want to get rid of it. They're anti-meritocracy. They don't believe the best should rise to the top. They believe in power,
Yes.
raw power, and they want to be given power. Right now, what they're doing is they're using identity to try and say that's how we
Mhm.
should distribute power, is based on identity, so that we can, overcome all of these inequalities that have existed. Let's do
Yep.
it based on identity. But if once that, they used to do it based on class.
Yep.
That was the old school Marxism.
Yep.
This kind of evil, this societal evil, this war with reality, it's taken so many different forms throughout
Mhm.
history. Right now, it is currently taking this form of social justice woke based on identity, blah blah blah. It's going to take another form in the future. But the thing that's in common in every mutation, and every time it's bubbled up and become popular, it's always a war with reality, with Mother
Yes.
Nature. And so you're going to lose that battle at the end. Like, you will lose. Mother Nature will win.
Oh yeah.
My pastor talks about, like, if you deny gravity and jump off a roof, you're going to feel the consequences immediately. If you deny reality, the reality of biological sex on a societal level, you may not feel the consequences immediately, but you're going to feel them pretty soon, within a
Yep.
generation. Like,
Oh yeah.
you will understand. Mother Nature will come to collect.
Oh yeah.
You can't just say, like, oh, it doesn't exist, and we're going to make that a norm now, and we're
Mhm.
going to we're going to celebrate masculinity in women and femininity in men, and that'll be fine. And, no, society's
No.
going to pay. We're going to
Oh
pay.
yeah.
There are going to be
And
consequences.
it is coming. The Pied Piper is tooting on his flute. Let me tell
Yeah.
you. My priest, he said something similar. He said the reason that they need you to affirm them and to go with their pronouns is because their state of denial has expanded beyond their own personal bubble. And
Yes.
because of that, if it doesn't get reinforced in the real world, it will also pop their personal bubble of denial.
My pastor talks about the same thing.
Yes.
When they say, "You're denying my very existence if you don't validate their
Mhm.
insanity," they actually really feel that way. They feel
Yes.
like their identity is contingent upon you
Yep.
speaking their lies for them. Their reality, because it's not real.
Yep.
And so it requires you to pretend. That's why they really do believe, if you don't pretend, then this isn't real. And it's like, yeah, because it's not real.
It's because it's not real. Yeah. Like, man, Jordan Peterson, and we're gonna wrap it up here real quick, folks. But Jordan Peterson did a great podcast where he talked about how you can. He said, because he was talking to this girl, and he's like, you can only bend reality so far before it snaps back. And she's like, what do you mean? And he took a ruler, and he was like, listen, I can bend this ruler slightly, and I can keep bending it. And he goes, this is, and his hand, he took his hand, he was like, this is the denial, and the ruler is reality. And
Mm.
so he's like, it's pushing, it's pushing, it's pushing. He's like, but the second anything disrupts that denial, and he slid his fingers to the side, the ruler shot straight back up. And he was like, reality snaps back. And he goes, how far you bend reality, he goes, it's physics. There will be an equal and opposite reaction when
Yes.
it finally snaps.
Yes.
I was like, boom, exactly. That's why they no longer say the science is settled or it's science, because XX and XY is science. And they're like, not that science. Like,
Right.
not that science.
Yes.
And so they're talking about the social sciences. So rather than biology and physics and chemistry, they are talking about the social sciences. That's what they care about. And that is why
Yes.
boys struggle in this current environment, because boys do not, as a rule, there's obviously exceptions, boys do not they don't do the abstract. They can, but they are very much logic-based creatures. They're not, I don't know how to, it's not that they're emotionally unintelligent. It's that they solve things. It's like, I'm sad. Okay, this is how we're going to fix it. That, like, they find solutions to problems. So when you tell them that there is no solution to the problem, it frustrates a lot of boys. And so when they're in school and you're telling them to sit still for 8 hours and they're not meant to do that, of course they're going to be stressed. Of course they're going to have anxiety. Of course they're going to be hyperactive and aggressive because they have no vent for their energy at all.
Yes.
And so the system, not just education, but in the microcosm, education has been feminized because it's structured around how girls learn and girls work.
Oh, and it's not just feminized in terms of structuring it for girls. I think I forget who, but somebody's characterized it before as they treat boys as if they're defective girls.
Yep.
It's not just feminized though in that way in terms of catering to girls. It's also feminized in the language that has infiltrated.
Yes.
A lot of the social justice language is this sort of mommying language, as if the purpose of school is to nanny
Yep.
and to coddle. And so you see all of this language that's crept in about for example, prioritizing feeling over thinking,
Yep.
and teaching. They're training teachers how to use this feminized language of, well, I
Yes.
feel this, and how do you feel, and let's check in on where we, all of this SEL, the social emotional learning stuff. It's
Yes.
all built around constantly evaluating how kids feel, which in that sermon I mentioned that when my pastor talked about training children, he said something to the effect of, if you're continually asking children to reflect inward in this narcissistic way, of course they're going to develop anxiety. Because
Yeah.
you're constantly calling attention to their internal state. Like, how do you feel now? And it's like,
Yes.
I don't know. I hadn't been thinking. He said I hadn't been thinking about me, but now that I think about it, it's
Yeah.
just sort of,
You're forcing boys
yeah,
to be more selfish because now they're
yeah.
having to look inside and grow. Like, you're forcing the kids to be more selfish because they're having to focus on themselves all
Yes.
the time.
Constantly feminizing the way they think of themselves, and
Yes.
this whole idea of harm, all of this nannying language that has just moved into schools and into the workplace, and
Oh yeah.
lean into, I hate all of these expressions, even
Mm.
even lean into it, any of these feminized kind of ways of speaking,
Yes.
and I catch myself using them. I catch myself saying, well,
It's
I feel,
everywhere.
yeah,
We're saturated in it. It is everywhere. I have one more comment and then we'll go
yeah,
ahead and do our outro. But I went to a training and it was, the title of it was The Science of Reading.
okay,
It's like, okay. In that training, I kid you not, they were like, "Hey, did you know that everybody learns how to read?" This is exactly what they said. Everybody learns to read the same way. And I was like, "That's not true. That's not even close to true." And they were like, "All you have to do is program the brain to follow the correct path." So, teachers, you are actually brain engineers. You're engineering their thinking. And I was like, I got kicked out of this
yeah,
training. I talked about it when it happened. I rose my hand. I said, that's false, inaccurate, and dangerous. I
yes,
said, we're not supposed to be teaching these kids what to think. We're supposed to be teaching them how to think
yes,
and
well,
how to, like, this is the letter A. These are the sounds it makes objectively.
yes.
Like, oh,
They will admit openly, if you look at the theorists, so social justice or woke ideology, there's all these different levels. There are the people who write the theory, the
mhm,
academics. Um, it used to be, before this became mainstream, you only spoke social justice if you had been to some university where you were reading, directly engaging with the theorists, like
mhm,
Judith Butler, and
yes.
and you had direct knowledge of what they were writing about. Okay, so then I read a bunch of that crap. I was a women's studies minor. That's why Foucault, all of it. When it gets filtered down, when it becomes mainstream,
Mhm.
there's the theorists, then it gets filtered down into education. This is where teachers are being programmed with this ideology, and then they're bringing it into the classroom, and they're teaching kids what to think, not how to think.
Yep.
And then in social media, it gets filtered down to TikTok, and it's in. So this is why now today it's so popular. It's in all of the social media. It's in
Yeah.
entertainment. It's in politics, and this is why now you have people speaking it who've never read the theory. And so if you were to say to them, "Oh, you're talking about white privilege," like Peggy McIntosh is full of shit.
I
They
read
don't
her.
they don't even know who she is, but they're speaking her ideas
Yeah.
because the theorists are up here. It gets filtered down. Now you're at like street level, like TikTok level.
Yep.
And so people, there's social justice. They don't even realize they've been programmed by the theory because they've
Yeah.
never read it. But it's
Yep.
come all the way down where they're speaking these ideas and they're being taught these things at the educational level in the classroom. They're being programmed with these ideas in the classroom. And the theorists way up at the top, they will say that their goal is to make it invisible that they're indoctrinating in the classroom.
Yep.
They'll admit it. It's like if you go and look at the theory, they'll admit they're trying to destroy all traditional norms. They say this. If you read any queer theory, they say we want to destroy anything that's traditional, anything that's normal, the whole concept of normal.
Yep.
They say we want to destroy the nuclear family. Like, it's not hidden. It's just that when it filters down, a lot of the teachers even haven't read the theory.
Yep.
They
There's too many
don't.
degrees of separation now. They don't
Yes.
even know what they're saying. Exactly. It's like
Yes.
the people, it's so I'm gonna make a correlation here, and it's gonna piss off a lot of people.
Oh no.
but it's true. It's like those women who wear the t-shirts that say wear the t-shirts like I run on coffee and Jesus.
Yes.
Like that's the equivalent of it. It's drive through. It's drive through. I'm gonna pick what I want, pick what I like.
It gets down to the pop culture level.
Yep. It's a catchphrase, and I don't have to think too much about it because I know what it means to me, no matter what it actually means. So I run on coffee and Jesus was actually a pushback because I don't know how many of you guys know Dunkin' Donuts. It says America runs on Dunkin'. And then a Christian group actually said, America needs to run on Jesus and then coffee. And that got spiraled into I run on Jesus and coffee or coffee and Jesus. Like most people don't even know.
I didn't know that.
Most people don't know even where that came from. And it was to push back against this idea that because they were like, you're making caffeine your God. Like if what you depend on to exist is caffeine, that's a problem. Like they went into this whole psychology thing about it. I remember sitting through that seminar and going, whoa. And but now it's on t-shirts and coffee mugs, ironically enough, and tumblers for their iced coffee. I run on coffee and Jesus.
It's sort of like if you look at any belief system like Christianity. So okay, if you can sway culture, I think it's something like you probably only need 10% of a population to sway culture in a certain direction. 10% of very committed, passionate people can sway the rest. Okay. So when we were predominantly, like when our culture was predominantly Christian, I say that because it's not anymore.
No,
it's not. It's predominantly social justice now.
Oh,
but when it was Christian, you had a bunch of people who just go along. Most people were followers. They just go along with the culture.
Yep.
Now, I don't think that's great, but I think it's better to have them conform. Most people are conformists. I think we're designed to conform. But if you look at, let me see if I can make sense of my thoughts here. They're kind of jumbled. Okay. If you look at the Asch conformity experiments, which I think started in the 1950s, they found that something as high as 70% of people are followers. And they would take people in a room. They would take a group of people and they would draw lines and they would say, pick the longest line. And they would go down. And so every person would be in on it except the last person. And they would pick the wrong line. And then like sometimes 70% of the time, that last person who was actually the one being tested, that person would pick the wrong line. That was obviously not the longest line because everyone else did. And so the results of that study were shocking to me because there's not a lot on the line there. Like why would you conform to something so stupid?
Yep.
But that helps explain when there is a lot on the line, like losing your job or being
Mhm.
thought of as a grandma killer or
Yep.
being called horrible names, why you would fall in with COVID propaganda, for example, why
Yes.
you would fall in with whatever it is that people are pushing, you will conform. So
Yep.
my point being, I think the majority of people conform. Now, if you have a culture that moves in the direction of Christianity, you're going to have the majority of people not really sincere about it, but at least they're conforming to something that I think is a better ideal. And so you will see those bumper sticker expressions of a faith and whatever that belief system is that's popular at the time. And it's not very deep, but at least they're conforming to something that I think has better ideals. And I would rather that be the case than where we are now, which is now culture's moved in this direction of social justice is the predominant faith.
Yep.
It is the most popular religion in this country at the moment.
Yep.
And even if they don't recognize it's a religion. And so you've got the majority of people following. Now they're not super passionate about it, but they're going to speak the beliefs. They're going to post the black squares. They're going to
Yep.
put
Yep.
the right flag in their bio at the right month. They're going to do all the signs that they're in the right faith. They're going to put the pronouns in their bio, but they're only there because it's popular right now. And they'll speak the white privilege this and whatever, and they've never
Mhm.
read the theory. Just like over here, a lot of these people who speak Christianity, they hadn't actually read the Bible, but they're just loosely, my
Yep.
point being the majority goes where the culture goes. And so if the culture makers sway things, you can sway the followers to a place
Yep.
that's better or worse for society. And I'm sorry, I this coffee just hit. Speaking of
No,
coffee,
you're good.
Jesus. So now I'm like trying to get it out. I'm like, this is why it's so important. The people who create culture, who create
Mhm.
entertainment, and the people who critique it, it's so important.
Yes.
It's more important in my opinion than the theory because it's how you move the followers is if you
Absolutely.
can articulate it well and present a vision and you can bring people over to a better way of conforming
Yep.
to a set of beliefs, a better set of beliefs.
Mhm.
So
And there are, this is also going to piss a lot of people off. There are inferior ideas. There is a scale, and there are superior ideas and ideals, and there are inferior ones.
yes,
Um, so that's true of life. And there's so much more we could talk about on this, but I know you got to run. I got to run. You have a show
I have a
in
show coming. I've got a show coming up at 1. I'm going to talk about the
yes.
Planet Fitness stuff today, probably
Oh
1
yeah.
o'clock Central. Deprogram with Keri Smith. If you want to come hang out, this week has been like I said. I was traveling with my husband. Went to see my mother-in-law. So, and then I had so many tech problems. I didn't end up doing a Wednesday show. So, anyway, I'm back today, 1 o'clock.
Awesome.
Um,
That's really exciting. I'm gonna drop that link to your channel in just a second when my computer decides it wants to cooperate. There we go. I watched the one you did with Az. Uh,
oh,
I love Az so much.
that was great. I really asked him. I said, "Hey, can we do an episode where you explain Gamergate 2.0 to normies?"
Normies. Yep.
And lately I've been trying to remind myself before I do a show that I want to remember that I want people watching who are on the left who don't agree with me. And so how would I talk to them and explain this if they were watching? And so and I know that some of them do. So
Mhm.
I try and remember that because I think it's too easy to fall into the trap of just talking with people who agree with us. I mean,
Yes.
it's very easy and it's of course it makes sense. It's fun. I like talking to
It's
people.
comfortable.
It's
Yeah.
comfortable, but I want to always remember how would I explain this? And sometimes I'd fail. If I have an episode where I get really angry, I'm like, "Oh, I know nobody's going to they're not gonna, they're going to turn this off. They're going to be like, she's calling us stupid." Click. So I
Side.
try not to do that.
No, I get it. That's why, like, I try to focus on like it. Like, if I, so I have a review coming up. It'll be out hopefully tomorrow about Damsel that just got released on Netflix, and in it, I explain. I'm like, there's this other show. It's called the Mythica series. It has a strong female lead, but it also has like all the characters are really strong. It's fantastic, and because it at this point, um, I'm not trying to be hyperbolic. It isn't enough to just call the stuff out. You have, like, if all you do is continually point out the problem and you don't offer any solutions,
Yes.
you're not helping the
Yes.
problem solve itself. You
Yes.
have to come up, like, I tell that to my students all the time. They'll be like, Miss Gravemaster, so-and-so took my pencil. And I was like, okay, did they ask for it? Yeah. What did you say? I didn't say anything. They asked and then they just took it. And I said, did you try to problem solve this before you came up here? No. Okay, why don't we go try some conflict resolution strategies and then revisit this?
Right.
And so, like, this is stuff that you have, like, it's everyday life. So it's just, it's wild that people don't know how to function as humans, as adults. Like, these are second and third graders, so I expect it. But, like, 27-year-olds, I'm sorry, you're not a kid anymore.
Yeah.
22, you're not a kid anymore. You're not. So real quick, Ann Pinkova said, can't watch now, but just wanted to say hail. So thank you, Ann, for the $5. And
Anne is if I don't know if you've seen it, but she's one of the hosts of Politically Incorrect Knitters.
Yes. I have knitters. It's T's, folks.
So if you have any crafters who watch your channel who want to know where the wrong crafters are, that's a good place to start. They're also at Blocked Magazine.
Nice.
I love those ladies. Go check them out. And fellas,
Very cool.
there's some fellas there.
And fellas, their link is in the chat right now. There we go. See, I know how to copy and paste. So that's their link. Everybody, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate every single one of you. Anybody who's watching this on the replay, I appreciate you as well. Your guys' support has been fantastic. Love you all to pieces. Keri, is there anything else you want to say, plug, do before we run?
No, I'll see you guys. If you want to come over, I'll see you in an hour at Deprogrammed. And thank you, Lady Graven. It was so great talking to you. I hope I get to see you in person again soon.
Yes, hopefully. Definitely. Well, folks, chat, you're beautiful, wonderful, amazing. And I mean all of that objectively, because we speak objectively here. And much love. God bless, Godspeed, and have a great rest of your day, folks.